Do you really want to have culture, or do you want the perception of good culture? Are you just checking boxes because that's what you were told to do and you just want to move on? Or are you really taking that in about what are we really doing? Are we listening? And are we making this a better place for everybody to work? And are we giving everybody an opportunity? Are we treating everybody with dignity and respect? Our industry on the supplier side has a tendency just to send so many emails before an event. And I just think that's disrespectful to just send so many emails and try to be really cute in your follow-up emails. You're wondering why they're not doing any business with you, and it could be something you just irritated them. You got to fall on your face to get back up. It wasn't a failure of the company. It was a failure of the cohesiveness of the leadership team. As executives, we just start assuming that people are doing it. But if that property manager doesn't care or doesn't feel that they're valued, it's going to affect everybody there. Everybody believes that theirs is going to be the next billion-dollar business, right? I think you got to ask a lot of questions. And so when you get that opportunity to pilot with the company, do not.
Oh yeah, well, it's funny because like you watch some of these great podcasts and they actually just jump right. They're like, what is it?
I think this is
Joe
actually.
Rogan.
I think this is actually a podcast. Like
Yeah.
we're live, we're recording.
We can just dive in. We're excited to do one of our first fully live interviews with all three of us in the studio here in Atlanta, Georgia. So thanks for flying up from Tampa. Kirk Downey, you have an amazing career so far. You've still got a lot of things you're working on. You've been a great mentor to me. You were one of the first people I met in the industry, I think over 10 years ago. And I got to meet you and your wife and many of the people you built your relationships with and your career with. And I think one of the coolest things is that you've been a part of many companies that are household names today, that especially in multifamily and commercial real estate, but you've built really strong relationships based on trust, reputation. You know, when others are moving, sometimes too quick,
Right.
you focus in the long term. And so I really appreciate that. So I'm excited today to kind of like dive in to some of the learnings that you've shared with me, that you've shared with others, but maybe some of the challenges you've had. So thanks first off for joining me and Adrian today here in Atlanta.
Thanks for inviting me. Good to be here.
Cool. Well, I want to ask you, so why did you get into real estate? What was it, a plan? Did you go to school for it? Was it in the family, or was it, what was that story of how you got into the real estate industry?
So no one in my family is in this business. I come from a very blue-collar family, so my family were all bricklayers.
Okay.
So, of course, I was supposed to go into the family business, and then my father looked at me one day and told me, "You're not going to do this. You need to go get into business." And so for me, real estate, or just getting into multifamily in general, was a complete accident. I was in the restaurant business, and in that restaurant business, met a wonderful man by the name of Terry Slattery, who most people in this industry know, by complete accident, and ended up going to work for rent, just to kind of get into the industry and decide. I was kind of doing a career change and deciding, what is this multifamily thing?
Mm-hmm.
And so I went and worked for Terry and his company, which I think is kind of like the McDonald's of the industry. You're either going to work for, back in those days, Apartment Finder or for rent, depending upon Apartment Guide. You go and work for those companies, and they really taught you what this industry was really all about. I mean, if you think back in those days, if you went to an association meeting, one of those big three kind of ran things, right? That's just the way it was. One of those marketing companies. And I was very blessed. I mean, they were really, really good to me, taught me a lot. I've still got friends there that I have a ton of respect for. But what I realized was there were bigger opportunities than that. And I was luckily scooped up by a company that asked me to move down to Sarasota, Florida, which is where I live now, to be the CEO of their company. And we took that company off pretty quickly, and that kind of started the career of, okay, this is where I need to be. This industry is where I need to be. It's very similar to the restaurant business. A lot of hospitality, a lot about relationships. So it just kind of felt natural to me, and kind of the rest is history. That's kind of how I got started. So complete accident.
Love it.
You mentioned hospitality. What can multifamily learn from hospitality? What are some things that we could learn from them?
I think customer service. I mean, at the end of the day, hospitality is you only have a short period of time to wow someone. Think about that. You go and stay in a hotel. It could be a day. It could be 3 days, whereas we have them for a year. And so everybody wows at the beginning, and then I think we forget about the wow factor after that, right? But they're very good at wowing you during that time and following up. Did you have a good time? Did we do everything right? But they only have a short period of time to do that. And I think they've always kind of been a little bit ahead of us. If you think about, the smart space, smart homes and stuff. I mean, they've had that technology in hotels for 25 years. And so, I think about it now. If you went to a hotel and they gave you an actual key, you probably would go, what are you doing? No one does this anymore. So I look at that. They always are kind of on that cutting edge. And then the service. But, COVID hurt them like it did everybody. So I think that industry's fighting their way back now.
Yeah. I think a lot about, a hotel, you look at the reviews. Just like now you look at an apartment building with the reviews. So reputation is so incredible. But you've seen a lot of companies who've traversed. You've probably seen companies who were doing well, then didn't do so well. So what is it about, I think one of the things you talk about a lot is culture, reputation, consistency, right?
Right.
Something you built in your career. Everyone talks about, no one says, I want to have horrible culture.
Right.
No one says, I want to have a horrible reputation. What is it that people do or that you've seen and maybe that some of the lessons you've learned about that?
It's interesting you say that because I think culture to me is like the new buzzword now, centralization. Culture's not, you could probably get 4 or 5 different companies and get them to give you a paragraph of what culture means, and it's probably all going to be different. Mm-hmm. Culture's not about happiness, as a lot of people think it is. It's about people wanting to be there and having roles and responsibilities and knowing what those roles and responsibilities and being held accountable for something that they know they're supposed to be held accountable for. That's culture. And we're pretty blessed. We just brought on a new client. We won't mention their name. And that's what they're all about, is what they've been able to create is how do you show an executive where their culture's at and how that culture is actually affecting their bottom line. And then we come back and show you making some changes in that culture, how it's going to increase your bottom line. And I think that's going to be the key. That's when you're going to see cultures continually move forward.
One of the things that constantly comes up in conversations and on LinkedIn is the fact that there's a disconnect between culture, the way it's being perceived at the corporate level, versus the one that's actually happening at the site level. What's your take on that? And if there's an issue, if you see the same disconnect, how do we fix that? How do we bridge that gap?
Yeah, that's one I use there. You got to decide, do you want to be successful or do you want the perception of success? It's the same thing with culture. Do you really want to have culture or do you want the perception of good culture? Are you just checking boxes because that's what you were told to do and you just want to move on? Or are you really taking that in about what are we really doing? Are we listening? And are we making this a better place for everybody to work? And are we giving everybody an opportunity? Are we treating everybody with dignity and respect? Is that what we're doing? I don't think it's about just going around giving everybody hugs, but it is about putting things in writing. This is what's expected of you. This is what's expected of us for you. And this is how you're going to grow in this company. As long as you lay that out, now accountability comes into play. And I think people are much happier as long as they know. It's when they don't know.
Yeah.
Or they thought they knew. Right? And then they come back and go, no one ever told me that. And so at the end of the day, it comes down to really good communication. Don't be scared to communicate. Make sure everybody's aware. And what they choose to do with that, you can't always control.
So I always learned what you just said is 2 things that were most important, I realized, in teams: awareness and communication. You can solve everything else. If you can have those 2 things, you're going to be really successful in life.
Yeah.
I'm curious, as you think about companies you've been a part of, and we can probably have an episode on each company and things you've learned and the lessons and the playbooks, et cetera. So if we think about some of the companies, you got to make a decision when you're deciding who to work with, what kind of technology, what kind of problem you're going to solve and why, and how long you do it for. We were talking about the length of time of companies. Right. How do you, what is one of the top things you look for? Obviously you talked about culture, but is it something specific? Like, are you a fan of hardware? Are you a fan of marketing technology? Are there certain areas, fintech, or do you kind of like to spread the wealth? Like what excites Kirk when it comes to tech?
Now our consulting company, we really only work with fintech and prop tech companies. But what really, for me, has always been is I'm a COO at heart. I'm an operator. I like to fix problems. I like to eliminate excuses. So I started teaching a seminar back in the 90s called No Excuses. And that's really what it was about, was eliminate excuses. So to that person, maybe it's a reason for not succeeding. To me, it was just an excuse. So what I look at now when I look at companies, I look at what they've created, and is it really an issue in our industry? Or do I need to look at them and say, this is going to be done in 2 years? Because nobody's going to care about it in 2 years. Are you really taking care of a problem or an issue? And if you are, then let's do that and let's solve that problem. But let's not start talking about everything else. Let's just talk about that. And let's go talk to some executives and see if anybody bites. Are they really interested? Is that a problem they want to fix? Maybe you think it is, but you got to talk to them and find out. And if it is, I'm in. Let's go do that. Let's go fix that problem. And so, at heart, that's really what I talk about, what people are doing. And some things come to me and I go, I think this is just nonsense. And then sometimes I go, I think you're on to something. I think that's a real problem.
What's your favorite length of time to work with a company? How do you look at it? Is it, do you have a goal going in? Like, is it 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years? Do you have any type of time limits, going in, or any preferences? Because I know every company is different, right? Based on the size, issues they have, challenges that they're facing.
Yeah, I would say, as a consultant, you need a good 3 years, because you've got to really come in and see what's happening. How do they get where they're at? Where do they want to be? What plan do they have to get there? A lot of times they don't. And so you got to help them, get that plan together. Then you got to get to the end of year one and go, okay, this is what we accomplished in that year. This is where we're moving forward. Now we're in year two, and you're helping them build that team and those leaders of exactly what needs to be done now. I think probably 3 years is about how long you've really got to spend with a company to really get it in the right place. And then you may be able to hand that off to someone, but as a whole, I'd say at least 3 years. That 3 to 5 year range is probably about right.
Everybody talks about how this is a very relationship-driven industry. Multifamily, I tend to agree with that, but there's also companies that are just trying to get in a space. And sometimes they don't even have a lot of resources to get in a space to break into multifamily. What are some specific pieces of advice that you have for them? How can I make it in multifamily if I don't have many resources, and obviously I don't have connections because I'm just like a newbie to the industry? What are some things that they could do?
I think you've got to sit back and, instead of coming in and believing that you need to come in and evaluate. And you need to be willing to go and sit down, go to as many events as possible, ask a ton of questions, and survey the room. Try to figure out who are those people that you're noticing, it's kind of like the mayor. Who is it that I need to go talk to? And start talking to those people, and then those relationships can get you into some meetings and get you those relationships that you're looking for. You can email and you can phone call all day long, and fill your CRM pipeline up. But if you don't get some relationships where people know, like, and trust you, you're going to have a real hard time doing business in this industry.
Selling. Tell us about selling. Give us a 5-minute masterclass on selling. How do we sell in multifamily?
Well, I guess, I'm a little different on that. I don't sell. I don't have elevator pitches. I'm one of those that has been asked that question many, many times by many executives in this industry, and I usually say the same thing. I go, when you're ready to sit down and have a business conversation, you let me know, and we'll have that business conversation. But I'm not going to sit here and give you some sales pitch to see if I can wow you. That's just not my style. I just want to sit down with you. I want to understand. I may get to the end of our conversation and say, I'm not sure that we're a fit for you, because I don't want to just sell something, because if I sell it to you and then it ends up flopping or it doesn't go well, then that's no good for me. I mean, I'm trying to build a relationship here, and a lot of times these people are my friends, so I really want that solution or product to work for them. So I don't do pitches.
That's something you taught me many years ago. I remember coming into the industry, and you think, like, it's funny when you learn sales or you think you've learned sales, you're like, I know how to set up meetings. I know how to set up calls. I know how to do demos. I know how to send emails. How do I scale it? I'm going to send a bunch of emails. I'm going to send a bunch of texts. I'm going to tell people, here's how you work with me. And you help me to kind of realize, yeah, it's actually about trust. It's
Right.
not, people kind of rush in, in other industries like software, people will try to sell stuff like that.
Yep.
This industry, people don't move at that lightning speed to buy. And you taught me a lot about the relationships, the trust, reputation, long-term. I'm kind of curious to know, I'm sure you've seen a lot of people come and go in the industry and people who have who've had maybe a tough reputation. Is there something that stands out that maybe is the biggest repellent to people right now? People talk about emails and other things. Are there certain things that you're like, oh God, it still surprises you that that people do certain things?
Yeah, a couple of things. I would say our industry on the supplier side has a tendency just to send so many emails before an event. And I just think that's disrespectful to just send so many emails and try to be really cute in your follow-up emails. But, that's what, the CROs are required to do, and everybody's trying to hit their numbers. So
Right.
I understand that. There's a data. Hey, if we send a certain amount of emails, then we get a certain amount of meetings, and all the math's supposed to add up. But you got to be careful, too, because you can rub them the wrong way where you're wondering why they're not doing any business with you, and it could be something you just irritated them. They're just not interested in talking to you now. So that would be one of them. The other is, when you're at events and you see people having conversations, there's people that I'll see come in and they'll interrupt those meetings or interrupt those conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, I was raised to not be rude, and I just see people come in and cut in conversations, or we taught an etiquette class for quite a few years, and I tell people when you're at events, just because there's alcohol doesn't always mean you need to consume it, because some people don't do well with alcohol, and then they talk a lot and speak pretty loudly, and I think you have to know when it's time to be in sales mode and when it's not time to be in sales mode. And I think there comes a time where you need to stop talking business and think about friendships and relationships that maybe potentially later could help you with sales. But some people just can't seem to get out of their own way.
And it's funny because I can look back now and I'm like, when I see someone do that, I'm like, that was me 12 years ago.
I think
that
you
was
and I
me.
had a conversation.
Absolutely,
about that.
we did. I had one. Chris Carter taught me.
Good people.
And Raymond Van Beveren,
Good people.
and it was great because they taught me at this event, I'm looking to do X. This is why I'm here. I'm not here to have sales conversations. You help me with the problems I have. We'll have a conversation when I get home, and I will give you all the time in the world. But when we're in Washington D.C., we're in Vegas. We are there for committee meetings. We're there for advocacy. We're there, talking about development. And something you really instilled, and I think, that's the key thing, is having mentors who can spend the time with you. And you taught me about being there for the owners, being there for the developers. And I think that was something that stood out for me. And so something I want to dive into is, many people may not know, you received a Lifetime Achievement Award in the industry, which is, they only give away once a year, right?
Right.
And the amount of time you didn't just spend in your businesses, but you spent advocating for the industry, mentoring, building out committees and leadership. So can you talk a little bit about the Lifetime Achievement Award? I know you're a humble guy. I want you to kind of brag a little bit about what it is, maybe some of the other people who brought you to this moment and got you there to lead for others.
I like people who are direct. I don't like when you just kind of go around in a circle. And I've got some executive friends on the property management side that have been very direct with me over the years, because they know that works best with me, who have come up and just said things to me. Hey, you should be careful with this. And I don't get offended, and that was many years ago. And I'd just go, okay, I hear you. But, of course, maybe at the beginning I was a little irritated. How dare you say that to me? But then I would walk away and think about that perception. Okay, I need to think about what was just said to me. And so, yeah, I think, had someone actually ask me, hey, how do I win a Lifetime Achievement Award? And it's not too often that I don't have an answer. And I just had to really think about that. And the only answer I could give this person was, if you're trying to figure out how to get a Lifetime Achievement Award, you're missing the point. A Lifetime Achievement Award isn't about what you've done in business. It's about what you've done for this industry and the people in the industry. And I didn't do that because I was special. Just the industry mattered to me. And I liked being around the people, and I liked learning, and I liked advocacy up in D.C. I liked being around it. And the industry's been really good to me. And, you know, so that's why I give so much to PAC. You know, I give the max I can give. Well, the reason why is because this industry is the reason that I have what I have right now. Why would I not do everything I can to make sure that it stays safe and that it's taken care of? Maybe not everybody looks at it that way, but I do. You know, this industry matters to me. It's not multifamily by accident. You know, 15 or 20 years ago, they actually looked to change it. They were going to not call it multifamily anymore. And I think everyone just kind of came back and went, what else would we call it? I mean, that's what it is. It is multifamily. I don't think multifamily had anything to do with apartment homes and communities. I think it had to do with us. We were multifamily. Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense. One subject that I think most avoid because it doesn't sound sexy, is not inspirational. Failure. So I'd like to hear from you. Tell us a story of failure that taught you the biggest lesson that you could remember from personal experience.
Well, think back. We all remember our failures, right? You got to fall on your face to get back up. I would say one particular, won't mention the company. It wasn't a failure of the company. It was a failure of the cohesiveness of the leadership team. Somewhere in there that disappeared. And you got to think about everybody who was part of that team is watching that. And you're like parents, right? And if they're not seeing that cohesiveness in that leadership team, they're not going to have it. Or they're going to figure out how to manipulate that. And that would be that one particular company that I look back and I have there's a proudness about what we did, but the failure of the leadership team still to this day bothers me. I'm not a person that ever has regrets. I don't regret things because I learned from them, but that's one of the ones that the disappointment would probably be big for me, is that was definitely a failure, that we should have done a better job.
How about the best success story that you have for us?
Best success story, business or personal?
Either.
Let's do both.
Sure, personal,
Let's do both.
Well, you guys all know my wife is Angie Pusateri. That's quite the success story. I'm married way above where I should be. But I would say what we were able to accomplish during my time at the National Suppliers Council with NAA. Tony Sculthorpe years before was the chair, and he and I had a moment where we had a conversation about where we thought the NSC needed to kind of go. And I'll never forget him for that conversation, and that conversation will stay between he and I. But I knew that when the time came and I got on that board, I knew exactly day one what we needed to do and what I wanted to make sure that we accomplished. But the goal wasn't, what did Kirk think, was getting everybody else's buy-in. How do I get everybody involved where it wasn't just the board making decisions, that everybody in that room understood that it mattered. And we all needed to be part of this, because, having a couple of people up there versus having an entire room, the entire room's going to win. And very proud of what the National Suppliers Council accomplished during that time.
That's great. One of the things is you talk about failure, learnings, and then success. I think, you being very direct, you probably had a lot, and I think there's a direct correlation to the amount of difficult conversations you've had with success. Like you said, if you're just like, oh, you're doing great, that's wonderful, or
right.
They're not wanting to hear the truth. So how do you think about having a difficult conversation? What are the things, do you find the same thing, like honesty, getting that feedback to someone, like you talked about leadership, can be, sometimes they don't want to hear it.
Right.
And they never hear it.
Well, I tell you, as a consultant advisor, I find it interesting to even have that title, because before we decided to jump into this space, I always looked at consultants and advisors in our industry as salespeople who just didn't want to answer to anybody anymore, and they kind of became consultants. And that's no jab at anyone, but that's kind of what I kept seeing. It was just a lot of people with a lot of relationships, but were they really, had they ever been the boss? Had they ever had to sign the top and the bottom of the check? Was there ever, them? And I didn't really see a lot of that. And so what I've learned in these 4 years as a consultant and advisor, it's really hard to advise people that already have all the answers.
I would say impossible, probably.
And we've got a lot of companies like that, but what we've tried to be good at is to listen. We don't just come in and just pencil a deal with somebody and go, hey, let's do this. I have to really look at things and decide, one, can we actually help? And if we can't, then I need to tell them, I don't think that we can help you. If we can, then we have to put a plan together before we pencil anything. We have to know that we're going to be on the same page. If not, it's just painful. And so that took a little while. One particular company that brought us on immediately really helped us a lot during that time, watching what was happening there and what did we think we needed to do. And so that's why we kind of stayed in the fintech and prop tech space. It was just easier when we're talking to a property management executive, to talk about all prop tech and fintech companies instead of, having somebody, maybe sold paint or something. Not that that's a bad thing. It just didn't fit into everything that we were talking about. Does that make sense?
Totally.
So we started realizing it was better to stay in one zone. And so the other thing you were talking about earlier that I'm a little bit different is I've never been a person who felt that it was okay to promote everybody I do business with. I just don't. We're like Intel, we help make things work, but I'm never going to tell you who I work with. I just don't do that. I'm not going to, because we've got a couple of their properties, I'm not going to start promoting that we work with this property management company. Those people are my friends. And if I have to tell you that I do business with that company to get you to do business with me, I missed something somewhere along the way. So I know a lot of suppliers out there love to tote who they, or tout who they do business with. I get that. I'm just not that person. I respect them, and I don't think that that's the right way to do it, but that's just me.
And now a word from Dean Fungawing, founder and CEO, Kairos.
So we look at freeze protection packages. We're looking at both shutoff valves that are rated by NFPA. I believe we're one of the only ones in the country that have this solution right now, and it is specifically designed for fire suppression systems. And then you've got not only leak detection in the fire protection package, but you also have the temperature monitoring. So you can see the ambient temperature, you can see pipe temperatures. You can then use this data to avoid having pipes bust in the middle of winter you have these cold snaps. What you're going to see in this country is that more and more of the climate, as that polar vortex pushes further south, you're going to see more and more extreme cold weather in the wintertime in Texas, in Georgia, in northern Florida. You're going to see more and more cold weather. It's going to get normal. And if you're not prepared with a solution, you're going to be surprised by this. You will have large insurance claims. You'll have residents that are going to have to get kicked out in the middle of the night when it gets really cold. This is a problem. Our system is also designed to notify your local fire department to let them know, hey, we've detected a freeze condition. We're going on fire watch, so that you're in compliance with local safety regulations. You can notify the alarm company in case you need to bypass the flow switch. All of this can be put together in a package that allows you to provide protection. So,
you've been through cycles. You've seen cycles come and go as well. And I think I love learning about cycles. And I think a lot of people forget. They have forgetful minds. As we're thinking about technology, people say this could be a tough year for technology. Do you think it's going to be, are you optimistic about this year around technology innovation and people adopting it? Do you think it's going to be a brutal year? What's your crystal ball say for this year?
I think it depends upon which technology you're talking about.
Okay. What are the bright spots for you?
I think if it's going to have a huge upfront cost, I think it's going to be a rough year. I think if it's going to help them either increase their bottom line, save their maintenance team time, keep their people longer, make work easier for people, if it's not doing those things, I think this year is going to be more about the team than it's going to be about the resident. That's just my opinion. I think we've got to, we're getting past all the COVID stuff now. So what are we doing to make sure that our team has everything they can to be successful? And if we think about that, back up for a minute, stop talking about the residents, start talking about our people. Mm-hmm. And if we help our people and our people are able to take care of things and they're happy and they want to be here, we all know how that works out. They take care of the resident. And the resident notices that. I'll give you an example. Have you ever been to a restaurant chain, right? And we won't name one specifically. And you go to that chain restaurant and you walk in and someone immediately greets you. The bartender waves to you. Mm-hmm. They take you immediately to a table that's clean. Server comes out. You go through the whole process. You get your food. Doesn't mean that it's the greatest food, but you got exactly what you expected. The service was good. You get up, you leave, people tell you bye. Okay. Then you go to that same chain restaurant in a different city. No one greets you at the door. You go to the table, they hadn't wiped it down yet. You go through the food's okay, you had to send something back. What happened there? Why? They've all got the exact same book of exactly what they're supposed to do. Why is that not happening? And I think as executives, we just start assuming that people are doing it. Mm-hmm. But if that property manager doesn't care or doesn't feel that they're valued, it's going to affect everybody there. And so I tell people when I look at companies, what I usually try to figure out is instead of us trying to blame it on the environment and everything else out there, we either didn't hire well or we didn't train well. Maybe both. Because sometimes I think we put people in positions because somewhere we thought that they were ready and they just weren't ready yet, or we didn't prepare them for it yet, but we didn't have a choice. And so we just put them in this position, and that's our fault. We set them up for failure.
They were so good at that role.
They were so
we
good.
Promoted them, but they're not great at that job. They were great at this job, right?
Yeah, not everybody's meant to manage, And so I see that happen, but you got to be willing to either go in there and give them everything you've got to help them, or know when it's time to pull the plug. And how do you talk to that person about, I don't think this is for you, but we've got a spot here in this company for you because you're special, but it's just not this position. And nobody wants to ever admit to, we failed. Yeah. This is our mistake. We put you in a position that it's not you. I think everybody believes that they can do what their boss is doing.
I want to go over a situation that comes to mind with operators having high standards with what they expect from their supplier partners. On the other hand, supplier partners are saying, okay, we would like a better treatment. We don't feel like we're treated as equal partners. And one of the issues that's kind of like, the one that comes up in a conversation the most often is that the payments that are like 45, pushing 60 days out.
Right.
Very few companies can afford this, to float so much debt until they're getting paid. Most of them actually can't. They're not in a position to, which I think, leads to a smaller pool of vendors to choose from for property management companies. I was thinking the other day, what if we create a system like apartment ratings to where actually vendors could get in and actually rate the property management companies. They could rate them based on their responsiveness, the way they respond to bids, the way they treat them, how fast they pay them. And you will have all the decision makers there from service manager, region manager, MVP, and actually you could rate those people. Just like, we're able to rate our Uber drivers today. What are your thoughts on the subject in general?
I think that's a really good question. I'm not a big fan of ratings. I think because ratings can be manipulated. Think about reputation management in our industry, and I'm not sure that all those numbers were always 100% accurate. I think it's going to come down to communication. When you were putting that contract together and you were having that conversation in the beginning, those things need to be discussed. As uncomfortable as they are, they have to be discussed, because the property management company has just as much responsibility in that contract as the supplier partner does. Right? It's not just, hey, you need to understand how this works. And so I've had those conversations with property management companies over the many years. And I tell them, say, listen, I've got employees and their families depending on me to make good business decisions just like you do. And you not holding up your end of the contract's not okay. It's not okay. So if something's come up and you can't do the 30 anymore and you need it to be 45, you don't get to just call me and tell me that's what it's going to be. You need to call me and we need to have a business discussion about if that's okay. And if that means we put an addendum in the contract that goes for 6 months, then that's fine. We'll work together, but it's the communication. And don't let me wait until you've gone 3 months or 4 months being late where I'm badgering you now because you knew this was coming. So you should just have have that. But you know what? Probably it's because the partnership wasn't as good as it needed to be. That executive from the supplier partner didn't create a relationship with the executive at that company. There's got to be something there. So I think it's still just going to come down. What did you talk about at the very beginning? Did we all discuss this? And I don't care what you wrote on the paper. It needs to be there, and you need to discuss that. We've all had that. I mean, 2008 through 10, it was some rough times. People were just not able to pay. But the ones who survived are the ones who sat down and said, okay, let's work something out. What can you do for the next few months? You're still going to have to pay me. You can't just give them a freebie. But how do we work this out? And, you sit down like adults and you figure it out, right? Not everybody, we can't expect them that everything's just going to go perfect. I mean, sometimes things fall. Just like if you're a supplier and you're not able to achieve what you told them you're going to do in your technology, you got to go tell them, I'm not going to have that ready by June. I just wanted you to know that. I'm going to have it in October. Well, at least you're honest with them. Don't just let them come back and say, hey, I thought that was going to be ready in June. You just got to be honest with people.
We were just at NMHC meetings, a lot of discussion around technology, NMHC, RETC, NAA, a lot of these different orgs focusing a lot more on technology, Wi-Fi to AI.
Yeah.
And there's seems to be a law on everything now, not just rent control or development. It's now technology. So I'm kind of curious to get your ideas around the stack, around integrations, the incumbents who are out there, and always the challenge of being at it. And, I think we talked earlier about the number of companies that you have to log into and dashboards and integrations. What are your thoughts on the integration challenge? And number two, thinking about the stack and the changes that have to happen because that can take so long,
Yeah, I think everybody just there's a lot of buzzwords going on like centralization right now, and you can talk to multiple companies and their idea of centralization could be completely different than another company. So I think it's just a buzzword right now. I think at the end of the day, what we try to work on is first off, who do you have and what does the stack mean? If you come to a company and you find out they're working with 50 different technology companies, that is not a stack. That's a mess. So, what is it that you want to accomplish? What is it? Show me that. And let's look and see what you've got that does that. And you may end up having repetitive stuff, right? You may have 3 different companies that have similar things that they're doing. Let's sit down and look at this because all those integrations and things that you're trying to do have just gotten ugly now. And that's probably one of the biggest difficulties for a supplier partner company is getting that integration or being told, hey, are you integrated with the property management software company, which sometimes is not even necessary. Sometimes there's nothing to put in or anything to pull out that affects what this technology company does, right? But nobody understands that because they just believe that you need to be part of their property management software. You have to sit down and go, let me tell you how this needs to work for us to be able to accomplish what you want me to accomplish for you. I think that's really what it's all about is having that conversation. How do I accomplish that for you? And this is what I need from you. And this is what we'll do for you. And I think people just kind of forget that. There was one particular company I worked with that I thought was so good at it. I mean, their the plan for their projects was just so detailed of exactly who at that property management company was responsible for what, and it was a live sheet. So everybody always knew. There wasn't any excuses. You couldn't say you didn't know. And they were very good. And you know what? Their rollouts always went well. I think that's probably one of the biggest shortcomings in our industry is rollouts. Everybody's really good at getting MSA signed, just not real good at rolling out products. And we all know property management executives know that. So as suppliers, what we shouldn't say things like, we're going to do the heavy lifting. oh, this is going to be the easiest rollout you've ever had. Never say silly things like that, because somebody in that company is going to have to do a heavy lift. I don't really care what your product or solution is. There's going to be some work for somebody.
Mm-hmm.
So just remember that. And so come in, be very detailed about what they have to do so they know what their roles and responsibilities are, and you're letting them know what your roles and responsibilities are. I can say that all day long. It's still going to be tough.
Yeah, we were told over and over, got to integrate. Yeah, got to integrate. And we said, well, how come? What do you need to see?
The why. Usually you don't get an answer to the why.
But everyone's taught,
That's
oh,
right.
it's got to integrate, got to go to one dashboard,
Well,
one
it's
system.
because
okay.
of property management software companies, back in the day, it was really, technology's really advanced a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But back in the day, you had to.
Yeah. I'm curious to know, maybe something that you're most curious about. What's the one thing that maybe you're most curious about learning and diving deeper in this year? Maybe it's something you're really passionate about or learning about. And it could even be maybe someone's writings that you're excited about. Is it something in the industry, something personal?
Well, anything to do with my grandkids is always a big deal to me. My granddaughter Sylvia and my grandson Solomon, everything's about them, as my family will tell you. If you're a client of mine, and most of them know that, that you're going to spend time with Sylvia, they know don't call me because you take a second. You're in the back seat if it's granddaughter day. That would be that. I would say in the industry, my focus this year is really about the property management executives. What are property management executives doing? What can we do to help them? What are the things out there that's going to help them be able to be even better at their jobs and have more insight into what's happening in the industry? As much as we all believe that they just know all that, because they are brilliant people, they don't have all the answers. So I'm paying a lot more attention to them. That's part of my business plan this year of 2025 is just executives. Now, I've been pretty fortunate. Most of my conversations and relationships are with executives, but I'm asking a lot more questions now, and I'm trying to understand, and my usually response all the time is why. And what I've realized is when you ask why, people either get offended or it's because they don't really know why. That's just the way they've done it, and no one's ever, our industry is always about this way we've always done it. That why really can mess people up. But when they can answer it, you should have pen and paper ready, because what you're going to learn when you ask that why and you go, okay, but do you have anything that can help you with that? No, I don't have anything that can help me with that, but that's the why. That really happened last year, but it's made me focus more this year to make sure I'm doing that.
From conversations with your clients and potential clients, what keeps them up at night? What are the main issues that really give them nightmares?
I think the new technology companies are trying to figure out how to work their way through this industry. They come in and very confident, very bright people, but this industry doesn't always make sense to them. You think about it, if you're in the banking industry or something like that, and a company buys your solution, well, they spend a lot of money, right? Well, of course they want to roll it out. In our industry, that's not always how it works. Sometimes it's the only way your solution is going to work is if, the property may pay you monthly, or the residents got to utilize it and buy it, and that's how you make your money. So it's not like you just bought some software and connected it. We're not all in the property management software space, right? You buy one of those big companies, of course you spend a lot of money. You're going to make sure that gets rolled out. But a lot of technology is very dependent upon resident using it. That's how they make their money. And I think that's the hard part, is figuring out how to do that. And the one thing I tell people is don't get frustrated with the company, don't get frustrated with the property manager, don't get frustrated with the leasing consultant or whoever, because they're not on your payroll. They got a lot going on. Their days are hectic. And if you believe that your solution's great and you think you're their top priority, and they wake up every day and they can't wait to do what it is you do for them, that is so far beyond what they're thinking right now. Their main focus is, am I keeping my occupancy up? Unless your solution's helping them keep their occupancy up, you're probably not going to be a top priority right now. It doesn't mean that your solution's not important and that it's not helpful, but you have to remember they've got a lot going on in their day.
I'm going to bring another angle up to what you just said, right? Brilliant minds that have been very successful, maybe outside of this multifamily space, they're imagining that they have a solution for one of the problems that we're facing as an industry. So they're thinking, okay, I'm going to hire some developers, high-end, very smart people to write the code for me. The next thing they look for the best and the brightest salespeople in the industry. So they're bringing those people in to sell the product that they built. But what I'm actually seeing time and time again is that the end user doesn't have any representation in this picture. It's
Right.
nowhere to be found. And they go straight to the top. They use that relationship with the CEO of the company, make the sell. The product now has to be rolled out. Where is it rolled out? To the end user, which is not always the resident. Sometimes it's the end user, it's your own employees at the site level. And then all of a sudden, people don't love using it. They don't get the adoption rate. And here we are in a very painful situation. Property management company being stuck with a product that, their employees hate, and then the property company seeing the low adoption rates and eventually seeing their way of, exiting, going out the door because, it's not, it can be successful. So what do you have to say of, companies actually having someone on staff, not just, on and off, someone offering back feedback, but someone on staff that is there and it helps them build the product. It tells them how this product will work in real world or not work. And then, they had to make the changes.
Yeah, I think you're spot on that. I think that, well, first off, there's a lot of companies who come in here that think that they've, reinvented the wheel. This is going to be this great thing. It's been tried before. I mean, so many things have come through this industry, and it just didn't work out. And it wasn't because it could have been it just didn't get rolled out right, or it didn't get introduced right, or it wasn't a standalone product. And that's happened a lot. That needed to be part of another solution. And so, that's one thing that we're very good at is going, hey, the reason you're doing the revenue you're doing right now is because this isn't ever going to be big enough. You need to partner with a couple of companies, and you guys together can be phenomenal. But egos have a tendency to get in the way on that, and everybody believes that theirs is going to be the next billion-dollar business, right? I think you got to ask a lot of questions. And so when you get that opportunity to pilot with a company, do not take that for granted. This is not, hey, I just want this to go well so I can get the rest of it and I'm going to make a lot of money. It's during that pilot, are you just making sure the integration works, or are you really talking to everybody? Are you getting together and asking them, hey, how is this working for you? And getting that feedback to make sure, so if they do decide to move forward with it, give an example, you've got a maintenance product. Well, you got to remember, maintenance people and leasing consultant people are two very different people. You've got salespeople and task-oriented people. And task-oriented people just want to do their task and go home, don't irritate me. Well, if you've built something like that, that's who you need to be talking to. How is this going for you? What can we do to make this better for you? So I think pilots, we as suppliers just have a tendency just to roll something out, but we don't ever ask anybody how it's going. Or we're talking to the wrong people. I think you're onto something there. Maybe those surveys where you're going out and really trying to find out how well are we really doing for you, and are we doing what we said we were going to be able to do for you? And if not, then you need to start making modifications. You need to make that work for them like you told them it was going to work. But like you said, you're not going to have adoption because most of the time the person who signed is not the person who's using it. So you need to find out, because that's going to work its way up. And then you'll find out, oh, now I know why we're rolling out fast now, because everybody's telling them, I want this on my property.
It's interesting, in something that on the topic of, needs versus wants.
Yeah.
Nice to haves versus I absolutely need this. One of the, funny enough, as you were just talking about ideas, we're listening to Paul Merlucky, the CEO of Andorra. And he's the guy with the Hawaiian shirts, right? And
Right.
Kind of wild. And he says, everything I'm doing, someone's already come up with that idea. People think everything, I'm not reinventing the wheel. I'm literally, he goes, you want ideas? Read science fiction. And he goes, everything I'm doing was written about 50 years ago, 80 years ago, 100 years ago. We are just now creating the technology to make it happen. And one of the things you did that was really remarkable, I don't remember what year it is, but you'll remember. When you brought in, so some areas I really love is safety, security, cyber, and then obviously labor. But within the cyber and safety world and fraud, you brought, I believe you helped bring in a FBI director once at a session. And it was really incredible to have them come in and talk about cyber and how housing is one of the scariest worlds. And he's like, call us. We're here for you to support you and help and be there. So it's really, is that a space, because I think you've been involved in cyber safety and that kind of world.
Still am.
I mean, to me, isn't that still maybe the redheaded stepchild, but it's one of the most important parts of our business?
It's crucially important. But, when we brought them in 2015, the industry just wasn't quite ready for it yet. You would go in there and have those discussions, and they would say things to you like, "Oh, yeah, our IT team does that." I think things have changed in the last 10 years.
It was 10 years ago.
Yeah,
my gosh,
yeah, it was 10 years ago. So now you think now, IT and cyber are two. We just our industry didn't understand that's two very different skill sets. Your IT person is not your cyber person, and vice versa. And if you ever meet anybody in the cyber world or anybody even in the IT world now, they'll tell you, as much as they want to tell you they understand, it's two different worlds. And so that's what he was trying to say, is that we understand that fraud, I mean, it's a big deal in our industry, and it's what we all deal with every day. Cyber was more about constantly having your equipment monitored to make sure that no one was getting into it, and that's not putting up a security wall. I mean, it's constant monitoring, and I would tell you, when I first started doing that, there was nothing more terrifying than to see what was really happening. And it's still happening. But I think people go, well, I'll just wait until I get hit and then I'll do something about it. And that's not a very good approach. But hey, our industry is still running. But the bad guys are always out there. And as a very good friend of mine in the cyber world, he's kind of the godfather of cybersecurity, told me, he goes, remember, we have to be right every time. They only have to be right once. He said, so we have no chance of winning, but we can do a lot of prevention. And so if you think about it that way, that's what you've got to pay attention to. So we probably won't go down that cyber road right now, but that's something that our industry is getting better at, but we definitely need to get a lot better at it.
Kirk, super amazing conversation. Thank you for coming down to see us today.
Wonderful.
It's really great to have you on.
I've enjoyed being here.
In person, and I wouldn't change this for the world. Totally different field, and just like looking at the computer and trying to build rapport, conversation with us and also with the audience. So very appreciative of you being here today.
I appreciate it. You and I, we always have good conversations. So thanks for letting me come sit in the living room with you. The only thing we were missing was a bourbon. We'd have been in good shape, man.
And we just
next time,
maybe later today, later tonight. Yeah, we have.
No, I love this. We're very blessed in our industry to have a lot of wonderful things, and to sit down and have conversations like this. I think it's you guys are going to get my mind thinking today. So I'm going to have to go make some mental notes of some things that I've got to be better at this year.
I challenge you to come back for a second.
Yeah.
Anytime.
We'll have to come down to Tampa as well.
Well, Sarasota, we're south of
that's
Tampa.
true.
Yeah, but
That's true.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
So,
we'll find a studio. We'll do it in person. Close to where you live.
it's a tough place to come, Sarasota, Florida. I think it's still 74 degrees down there right now. So
Yeah, I can only imagine the pain.
What's your favorite spot to go in Sarasota? Is there a great spot?
Well,
spot?
we do have Siesta Key, which between there and Clearwater, are probably the #1 beaches in the country. So life's pretty good there with that. But we're pretty fortunate. Sarasota is growing so fast. It's the fastest growing airport in the country right now. Just a lot of growth down there, but with that comes pains. But there's a lot of great things. I mean, a lot of wonderful restaurants that are being opened up down there. A lot of entertainment, things like that are starting to pop up down there. So that culture is really great to watch that growth. And I hate that I'm talking about Sarasota now, because it's just going to mean more people are going to come down there. But come on down and see us. It's a pretty wonderful place.
You got it. Maybe make some new friends.
Maybe it's my
or
wife
maybe
and
get
her. It's
some
our
more
fault.
friends
It's our
that
fault.
you convinced to come down.
Yeah, it's a
We
wonderful
gotta
place.
get down there. We should come down. Well, I'll have to do an event down there. But thanks for coming up to Atlanta. I love having you.
Hey, it's an easy flight for us, because if you fly Delta from Sarasota, you always have to come to Atlanta. So this is easy flight for me.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I appreciate you guys inviting me to be here.
Absolutely.
I hope,
so
that some of
excited
this
to
is helpful for somebody, and if not, we can do a round two, and if they've got things they want to hear us talk about, let's do that.
Absolutely.
Sounds good. Thank you, sir.
Appreciate you.
Appreciate
you.
it.
Anytime.